Looking back at the entire journey, what would you like to say to the volunteers and the public that helped achieve this outcome of the libraries being volunteer run?
Yeah, for me, it's huge gratitude for the amount of time and effort and forbearance and they've put into working with the council, to working with their communities, and making it work. You know, it's not that often that we can look at something and just go, yeah, that has worked. It's been tough, there's been struggles, but they've made such a solid go of it, and it's been, not only has it worked, in many ways it's been really successful as well, so it's been a positive step.
To the volunteers that are already working in the libraries, you have no idea how valuable you are. Every half an hour, every hour you put in, you're providing something that should be a paid service. The funding hasn't been there, and instead of allowing these services to disappear, you've stepped up so that they're still there for the people that really need them. Because not everyone has internet access at home. Not everyone can afford to heat their house all day. Not everyone has a safe place indoor that a kid can play. Not everyone can afford to, sit in a cafe for an afternoon. And libraries offer all that and more. So every person who's volunteering in a library is keeping those services open where there should be funding and there isn't. I'm just so grateful to everyone.
The work that they're doing now is amazing. The work that they did 10 years ago when they took over the libraries was amazing. So the fact that they've maintained different people, sometimes in some cases the same people from that day one, are still there, still doing this amazing stuff. But to all the new volunteers as well that have taken it on, I think it's brilliant that they're willing to give up their time to do this amazing thing and keep these services going for the communities. I think that is so important. It's sad to lose these kind of things, and we haven't. So it's brilliant. Yeah. As I'm sure you're aware, in the kind of 2013-ish, our funding for the library service was reduced quite dramatically. We had to have a cabinet report at the time to try and decide really how we could continue to operate a kind of an effective library service. There were certain libraries that we kind of had to make a very tough decision that actually we could no longer afford to operate ourselves. And then, based on that, it was essentially offered out to the communities to be able to run them. And what we saw was there were various protest groups across the city that were protesting, understandably, against the closure of libraries. But one thing we saw was this desire to maintain a service in their area. For us, it was actually a really great thing to see. It's really nice to be able to see that the public support this service that means so much to us as well, rather than just let it kind of peter out into nothing. So it was great to see this upwell of ground support to say, actually, no, we need these services. You know, that all this press and people that say, oh, libraries are dying, people aren't reading books anymore. It's just not true. You know, they're still there, and there's still this great kind of support for them.
We were amazed at the public meetings how many people turned up once we realised what was going to happen. We were amazed. Where did all these people come from? You know, it was tremendous.
We wanted to try and keep it going for the community, because at that stage, it's sort of 10 years ago, there's probably more in the community now than there was then. So to lose the library would send a sort of very negative message to the community.
What we saw was, in many cases, those groups would step up to say, actually, well, okay, instead of closing the library, we can run the library. And from that, we then commissioned a programme of training to get the groups, which were kind of loosely organised groups, into properly cohesive charities that could then deliver a library service.
Well, we were very anxious about it because we didn't want the libraries to close. We didn't think that what was happening was right. We thought that the council should continue to keep the libraries open. So we campaigned for that. But when they closed the library in September 2014, we were ready to reopen it. They closed it on the Saturday and we reopened on the Monday. And we've been going ever since. The council gave us quite a lot of training and support, which was very important. They wanted the volunteers to succeed. And really, I think the biggest thing I'd say is we've learned so much. We feel it really has been a very steep learning curve, but really an enjoyable one.
Yeah, one of the things I think we can be really proud of is the way our confidence has developed from those very first days when our very nervous bunch of volunteers issued our very first book to our very first customer, and the way that the confidence of the organisation has grown since then is just astonishing. So that now, for example, we are building our own book collection with donated books and books that we've bought. We've implemented our own library management system separate from the council's. We've started doing other things like evening talks, knit and natter, cinema, and then for us here in Greenhill we have things like the Open Gardens weekends, the farmers markets, that we run 3 of those a year, and even the Scarecrow Festival, which is on at the moment. These are all things that go well beyond the kind of thing that this library was doing when we originally took it over.
Our libraries are part of a council. The council is a very large body and has to do things in a very particular way. Whereas volunteer-run libraries, each one is individual and they can adapt. They can think, we want to do this thing, and they can go out and do it. And we always look at that in awe and a degree of jealousy. It's like, oh, why can't we just do that? But they can. They can think. Somebody can come into the library, have an idea, and they can act on it. And it can be quite big things. You've got things like Greenhill and Topley libraries where they run the community cinema groups, which is brilliant. That's something we'd really struggle to do. I think it's great that they've got time to do that. The local fairs that the libraries get involved with, the bookshops that many of them have inside the libraries, and just the integration with the community, because they are the community.
Something I'm particularly involved with is the organisation we call VLIS, which just stands for Voluntary Libraries in Sheffield. We meet as a group, monthly, usually on Zoom, and it gives us an opportunity to discuss the problems that we may be having, to share best practices, and generally offer each other mutual encouragement. We are amateurs in the literal sense of the word, of people who do it for love, but I think our goal is to provide a professional standard of library service, and I think to a large extent we achieve that.
One thing that I've really seen since I've been here is that the library it fulfills a different function. It's as many people as you have here, the library fulfills a different function for each one of those people.
Feeling connected to something larger than yourself is massively helpful for well-being. Feeling like you're doing something that contributes and that you're part of your local community, that gives so much well-being, it really does. And I can confidently say that being a volunteer at the library has really helped with my mental health recovery.
I've never been doing it for me so much, but the impact comes when you sort of see how it affects other people and the benefits it's brought to other people. With someone just last week, we do part of the holiday activities and food programme, so handing out recipe packs and packed lunches and activities. And one of the parents came up to me and said, I don't know how we'd have got through the summer if it hadn't been for this. Financially, we wouldn't have been able to manage. We've had volunteers who've come in and found family in the context of being part of the team. Some have gone on to find work, once they've sort of gone through getting confidence and experience. There was a lady who used to come in who had terminal cancer, and she'd just come in every week and sit down and chat to one of the volunteers, and that helped her through that.
People come here with all sorts of queries and questions, and some people just come in to talk because they're lonely. They just want to talk to somebody. It might be about the weather, it might be about a book, or just hi. You might say, hi, how are you? And they're suddenly stood there talking to you for about half an hour. And then they go away happy because you might be the only person they spoke to all day.
This library is my local community. This is the focal point. And by volunteering here, I get to be part of that. I get to meet people who are working in my community that I would never run into otherwise. And it's just so positive to be part of that.
We want the library to be a really vibrant place. We want it to be full of different people, of different generations, doing different things here. We obviously there's a stereotype of a sort of old-fashioned kind of library. It's very stuffy, you get told to be quiet all the time by the librarians. We don't want this library to be like that at all.
I like it that we're about books and the children side of things. I like it that we're inspiring children with a love of reading, and we've had children say the most amazing things to us about it.
That made me think we also have the local schools come in and have a little visit, so we get different classes each week.
When I went to do the assemblies, I asked the children, have you been to a library? And I asked them to talk to their person sitting next to about what libraries were like. And when I asked them to give me answers, they came up with some really lovely things that were so positive about how they feel about being in a library. And I particularly remember one girl said, in a library you can be yourself and you can do whatever you want, you can read whatever you want to read, and you can pick out any book from the shelf and you can read it. And you see that when they come in, the children, they sort of come running in and it's like, oh, this is all for me, you know, this whole world here, and I can play with the toys or colour, or I can pick any one of these books off the shelf and get lost in the experience of reading it, which is about your imagination, isn't it, and creativity, and it's so lovely to see that, and you see it sort of time and time again.
If there's one thing you could say to all the volunteers just across the city, what would you say to them?
I think the message would be to keep going, even if you don't feel like it, because the one thing that we don't know is the impact we have on people's lives. You know, in whatever community we are, there are now 16 volunteer libraries, and 10 years later there are still 16 volunteer-run libraries, each having an impact in their own communities. And it's fantastic to see that they're all different, they're all in different communities, they all respond in different ways, but all providing such an important contribution.
It's a very rewarding thing to do.
Yes, and don't give up, I'd say. I just hope that we can keep going for another 10 years, and it would be lovely to have more people coming to volunteer. That's always what we'd like to see.
I'll fight forever to keep this library open. I don't care what it takes, I will keep going, because it's a focal point in the community.
Remember that?
Well,
1, 2, 3.
just like a
Super trooper, wings are gonna fly me, telling how we'll fun, like I always do, 'cause somewhere in the crowd there's you.